Jujutsu Kaisen. Oh boy, where do we even start? The golden child of modern shonen. And in all honesty, it truly was. It had everything. The style, the lore, the characters, the fights. It had the potential to be the greatest shonen of our generation. And it wasn't even a debate. The only other shonen at the time with a massive fan base was My Hero Academia. And people were constantly bashing on it. I mean, to be fair, it was getting kind of weird. That fandom was not it. And Black Clover's anime had been on a hiatus for a very long time, so a lot of fans had left. JJK was on the straight path to becoming the greatest of our generation. And then, it didn't? Not because it failed, but because somewhere along the way, Gege Akutami, its brilliant creator, got tired. Burned out, in fact. Done. This is the story of how Jujutsu Kaisen was the greatest shonen that never was. Let's go. Let's go back to where it all started. The anime dropped in 2020 and hit the scenes like a freight train. In a year full packed with amazing series, it had immediately everyone hooked. But even before that, manga readers knew this wasn't just another shonen. The main protagonist, Yuji Itadori, wasn't trying to be Hokage or Pirate King or Wizard King. He didn't have any grand ambitions. He was just a kid, trying to save people, a lot like Ichigo in fact. He didn't want to die with regrets. That was it. But that simple motivation was more human, more grounded, and yet more profound than most shonen MCs we'd seen in years. And that is not a joke. And the world felt so rich, both in history and its power system. Cursed energy, domains, reverse curse technique, heavenly restrictions, binding vows. It was complex but clean, and with the history of the King of Curses of 1,000 years ago, coupled with the clans and hierarchy, and especially him, made you want to understand it. And the early arcs were nothing to scoff at either. The Versus Mahito and Kyoto Goodwill arcs were good in their own way, but the anime bumped them up to an unbelievable degree, with animations and fights going above and beyond. And by this time, everyone was hooked. Everyone knew about JJK. And a lot in part by the helping hand of the blue-eyed king, Gojo Satoru. A character basically built to be popular, both in character design and his role in the story. Being the absolute pinnacle of this world, completely untouched by anyone, no matter how many. The only contest for him being the King of Curses, Sukuna, the main antagonist of the show, now residing in our main character Yuji, and the fight between these two pinnacles being the main build-up of the entire story. Gojo was what made Jujutsu Kaisen what it was, and he was also the reason the show died in such a way, which I will get back to later. The hidden inventory arc then went on to introduce everyone's favorite Jin motivation, Toji, along with being a Gojo flashback. So you know people are gonna watch this. But what truly set JJK as one of the greats was the Shibuya incident. This was where JJK truly came into itself. It was straight, peak, unfiltered, unrelenting chaos. Gojo sealed away, Nanami, Nobara, Jogo actually being terrifying, Sukuna going full demon mode and massacring innocents like it was nothing, Yuji's immense trauma, of course, which will be a very prevalent theme coming forward. No arcs in recent memory had readers gasping week after week. The crowd was going wild. Everyone, and I mean everyone, were talking about this arc like it changed their lives. It was truly the best of its time. And even when the anime came out in season 2, everyone was again talking about it. The arc was genuinely one of the best shonen arcs of all time. JJK at this point wasn't just good, it felt unstoppable. Amazing in fact. And this show wasn't afraid to hurt your feelings. Gege Akutami was a different breed of author back in the day. Where most shonen play safe, Gege went full off script. Characters didn't have plot armor at all. In fact, the villains had plot armor at this point. Death meant death. Yuji wasn't always the center of attention. Sometimes he got sidelined, and sometimes he lost. And the villains? They won. And they won a lot. But what made JJK feel so dangerous was that everything mattered. A flashback in chapter 10 might affect a review in chapter 120. Characters like Toji Fushiguro, who only appeared for a handful of chapters, ended up becoming legendary. And Gojo? Now let's just talk about him. Satoru Gojo was the Kakashi of this generation. But if Kakashi was a demigod who could blink away mountains, not nearly as good a sensei as Kakashi, but his presence in the series was a real double-edged sword. He was cool, but too cool, too strong, and Gege knew that. So what did he do? He sealed him away. And just like that, Gege ripped away the safety net. You felt the danger. The power balance shifted. No longer were humans in the advantage. The manga felt alive, unpredictable. But then, something changed. After Shibuya, Jujutsu Kaisen entered a new phase. The plot became denser, the stakes got higher, but so did the fatigue. The Culling Games arc, what should have been JJK's Chimera Ant arc, felt bloated. Fragmented, in fact. The pacing slowed. New characters like Kinji Hikari and Takaba, who are amazing, but were thrown almost with no build-up. Sure, they were cool. Hikari's gambling domain was genius. He in specific was everywhere. Takaba's gag power's absurdity was refreshing, but the emotional threads that grounded the story, it was slipping. Yuji, our protagonist, at this point started to feel like a side character. He was starting to disappear. And when he was around, he was just there. Mourning, suffering, surviving, but not growing. And that's when the whispers began. Readers noticed Gege was tired. Not narratively, but creatively. In interviews, Gege admitted he didn't want the series to drag on. He planned to end JJK soon. And unfortunately, it was showing in his work. Arcs moved fast, huge fights were resolved in a chapter or two, motivations got buried under exposition, plot twists felt less like revelations and more like shortcuts. A very pivotal point being that at the end of the Culling Games, when Gojo was unsealed, there was a 1-month time skip, which was completely skipped over, and the only information we got of this time skip was later on, when we didn't really care about it anymore, aside from the fact that it was just very weird. What was once surgical writing had now started to feel like speedrunning. But then, it came.
At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get
Gojo versus Sukuna. Major manga spoilers from here on out, but you already knew that. When I say this fight shook the internet, you best believed it. Shit, forget shook the internet, it ran the internet. For manga leaks. Every Thursday morning you'd had people waiting for next chapter leaks. Leaks! Everyone was on it. The entire world was split. It genuinely felt like Prime Ronaldo versus Messi. You were either Team Sukuna or Team Gojo. And every week you'd come to Sukuna being absolutely dogged by Gojo, and the Sukuna fandom would be trolled to oblivion. And when Sukuna finally did something, all of the Sukuna fans would go berserk, and then Gojo would just end up overshadowing him in the same chapter. And to Gege's credit, the choreography was brilliant. The domains, the counters, theorizing each week. It was a chess match disguised as a brawl. The fight everyone had waited years for. The Limitless versus the Malevolent Shrine. The pinnacle of cursed energy. But regardless of whose side you were on, it was truly peak. It was the perfect definition of you just had to be there. The fight was so peak, in fact, that the fan animations were going off the charts over the board. There are fan animations that look straight out of studios, and they're still coming out to this day. That is how iconic this fight has become. But then it happened. Gojo died. And not just died, he lost off-panel. 1 minute he's winning, the next he's cleaved in half. And instead of grief, fans felt cheated. I remember waking up that morning and filled with complete dread. His final monologue wasn't even to Yuji or Megumi or his students. It was a casual conversation with Geto. In the afterlife. No closure, no goodbyes, no proper death, no fair fights. I mean, it was the king of curses, so he's bound to pull some sneaky moves, but still. You could feel it in the panels. Gege didn't want to be writing this anymore. Sukuna's power-ups kept escalating. Higuruma died the chapter after unlocking a broken ability. Yuta, who trained so hard, got off-screen. Every victory just felt temporary. Every plan failed. It became less about tension and more about inevitability. A very standout moment for me was when Yuta came back, and we were all expecting to get more lore on when Geto choked Kenjaku, but we get nothing. And speaking of Kenjaku, him, Tengen, and the merger had so much lore behind them, but nothing there too. It just started to feel like we weren't watching a story. We were watching an author wrapping up. Here's the tragedy. Jujutsu Kaisen could have been the greatest. It had the world, literally. A magic system as tight as Full Metal Alchemist. Support from a lot of people. Literally everywhere across the world people knew about this. A power ceiling that rivaled Hunter x Hunter. A tone that balanced Bleach's edge with Naruto's soul. It even had its own philosophies. Death, regret, consequences, legacy. But it all was being squeezed into a bottle with an expiration date. And I get it, and so do you guys. Weekly serialization is brutal. Gege's health issues and mental exhaustion, it's all real. And hey, I'm in no position to talk about how someone decides to handle their work, and it's not fair to ask a creator to destroy themselves for our entertainment. But as a fan, it's hard not to moan what could have been. Imagine if Gege had the luxury of time. If JJK had taken breaks like Oda or Horikoshi. If the Culling games were paced like a proper war arc. If Yuji had a real closure. If Nobara wasn't just sidelined and used for cheap thrills. And if the final battle didn't feel like a speedrun to the finish line. And if the merger wasn't just some ticking time bomb to just avoid. It's not that JJK is bad, it's that it could have been the best. And I do mean that. But maybe that's part of the beauty. JJK burned bright and fast, like a flame. Its brilliance came at a cost. And that chaos, that unpredictability, that's what made it unforgettable. It gave us Gojo Satoru, the Six Eyes, the Hollow Purple. It gave us Yuji Todori, a kid cursed by fate but still fighting. It gave us moments of raw, devastating beauty. It reminds us that sometimes heroes don't win, and that's okay. Yes, it didn't live up to its full potential, much like Megumi, potential man. But maybe that makes it even more special. It wasn't safe, it wasn't cooperative, it wasn't perfect, but it was Gege Akutami's. For better or for worse. Here's to Jujutsu Kaisen, the greatest shonen that never was. This was something I don't think I'll ever forget. The weekly releases of Gojo vs Sukuna, the Hakari Dance, the Lobotomy Kaisen. These were some of the best times to be a fan. A story that will live rent-free in our minds, even if it left us wanting more. And hey, the anime is yet to come. Hey guys, if you like this video, drop a like and subscribe to my channel for more stuff just like this. Also, share it with your friends. It really helps out with the algorithm, And let me know in the comments. Do you think Jujutsu Kaisen fell off? Or is this just how a cursed story was meant to end? This has been Venantius signing off. Peace. God bless you.